Thank you so much for the beautiful music. Good morning and welcome to everyone with us, those here in this space and those joining us on live stream. I am Reverend Millie Phillips, an affiliated community minister here at San Francisco UU, and I am joined on the chancel this morning by Worship Associate Sam King. Thanks to all of those who have made our service and our Sunday programs possible today, to our guest musician, cellist Jill Brindle, to Mark Sumner, our music director and pianist today, to communications director Jonathan Silk, and to Eric Shackelford and Eli Boschures for live streaming our service, to our facilities staff today, Kelvin Jones, Matias Pineda Salazar, and Francisco Castellanos, to Athena Papadakos for our lovely flowers, to head usher Linda Messner, and to our other ushers and greeters, thank you. We hope all of you here or on live stream have an order of service so you can follow along in worship. For those who are joining us on live stream, if you have any issues or problems at any time, please know that someone is monitoring the chat to answer any questions. And if this is your first time joining us in person or watching, thank you for joining us. If you would like to receive a copy of our weekly email newsletter, which includes a link to the order of service and Sunday live stream, you can fill out one of our connections forms. These forms are on the welcome table outside the sanctuary, in a pew in front of you, and also available through a link in the order of service or video description of today's service. And please note that there is a masked-only section on my left, and a section for those who are here with their animal companions on the right. And our ushers have hearing-assisted devices located in the back of the sanctuary if you need one. So welcome to worship.
Now is the time for us to light our chalices, the symbol of our faith. If you have your own candle at home, feel free to get it and light it as well. The words are in your order of service. We light this chalice for the light of truth, the warmth of love, and the fire of commitment. We light this symbol of our faith as we gather together. Now is the time for us to greet one another. If you're on the live stream, feel free to chat with other folks, perhaps about a hope that you have for the future or about your plans for Memorial Day. Now let's take a moment to talk to somebody new.
Thank you, Mark. Now, if you would rise and sing our first hymn, which is number 298 in the gray hymnal, Wake Now My Senses. Now, please join in speaking our covenant and singing our doxology. The words are printed in your order of service. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in freedom, and to help one another.
junior year of college. I take a class on social entrepreneurship because some of my friends said good things about it. Social entrepreneurship is basically starting a business, but with a for good mission, or maybe a nonprofit that still manages to make some revenue. The class was great. The professor described it as being like business school compressed into one term and with a focus on nonprofits, and it didn't disappoint. I liked the class so much that I decided to take the next one. Only this class wasn't just learning, it was actually putting your skills to use and starting something. I didn't really know what I was going to do, but I was running a Tech for Good club, and I thought it could be something more. So I made that my project. I came up with a logo, a name, a business plan, got a group of friends to help me with it. We started reaching out to other schools to get new chapters of the organization set up. The nonprofit never really took off, but it still set me on the path to be working in Tech for Good full-time. Without that class, I might just be working at a generic big tech company. There was a ton of other wisdom in that class that I've tried to carry with me. A common theme was not to put yourself in a box, not to limit yourself, to instead take the uncomfortable step that might get you somewhere. Cold emailing people, putting yourself out there, asking for what you need. After all, as the professor would say, if you don't ask, they can't tell you yes. I think the reason my professor encouraged us to get out of our comfort zones and do big things is because if you want to solve big problems in the world, you can't do that when being comfortable. You can't do that without putting yourself out there and hearing no a lot, but still staying convinced that your idea was good so you can keep bringing others on board. One part of nonprofit business planning that we learned about was called the BHAG, an acronym for the Big, Hairy, Audacious Goal. That means if everything goes well, what change could you make in the world 10 years from now? How many lives could you save? What policies could you get into place? Who could you help feel safe in their own skin, in their own community? What part of the interconnected web of existence could you help repair? Whose inherent worth and dignity would finally be recognized without question? And that's important. It's important to ask big questions, to imagine that you can make the world a better place in a big way. Because if you can't imagine it, then what chance do you have of actually doing it? Especially when the problems are so big that any rational person would say it was impossible to solve, it's unrealistic, you should just quit. Since then, I've continued to try to make the world a better place with my career, doing some work in healthcare, government, politics. I haven't always succeeded, but I have done some good. And there's a good chance that the reason for a lot of that good was because 15 years ago, one of my teachers told me to imagine that I could do something big.
Thank you, Sam. The offering this morning goes to Veterans for Peace, this dedicated group of people who know from lived experience what war is really like, have been, quote, exposing the true cost of war and militarism since 1985, while promoting a sustainable and peaceful world, unquote, and providing a community for veterans to come together to work for peace, justice, and healing. To make a donation on Vanco, use the donate button on our website or scan the QR code, and please select the line for special Sunday offering. This designation is important to ensure your gifts get supplied correctly. And if you are sending a check, please mark in the memo today's date, 5/25/25. We welcome your generosity. Thank you so much. Please join me in the spirit of meditation and prayer, in the many names of that which each of us holds sacred, God of so many names, maybe none at all. Let us hold in our hearts all within our church community who are grieving, ill, in pain, or dealing with other hardships. On this Memorial Day weekend, let us hold in our hearts as well all who are suffering from the myriad injustices of our times, and especially today from the impacts of war. Those grieving the loss of loved ones to horrific violence, families literally ripped apart. Those grieving the loss of children who have tasted a brief, bitter life of suffering, never getting to grow up. People coping with physical and mental wounds from which they will never fully recover. Combatants, whether by necessity, coercion, or choice, forever reliving the moral injuries and traumas of battle. The witnesses to atrocities and their aftermaths, living with haunting memories. Persons facing material and psychological losses by displacement from their homes and even countries, often forced to start new lives elsewhere as refugees. Those mourning natural and human-made environments they held dear, now destroyed, and all forever living with the intimate knowledge that these consequences will continue to occur until at last we find the way to put an end to them. May we know in both our minds and hearts that war, perhaps except as an absolute last resort to liberate us from bondage and exploitation, solves nothing and adds no value except to the bottom lines of ruling classes and to the feverish dreams of dictators and zealots who hunger for absolute power. In the words of John Lennon, imagine all the people sharing all the world, knowing that such transformation starts with imagination. And in the interim, as always, may we be grateful for this community and all the others in which we find solace and even joy, where our imaginations are celebrated, not dismissed, where we are surrounded by those we love, inspired by art and music as we worship, celebrate, organize, and grieve together. May we live conscious of the ultimate value of each sacred moment of life. Amen. And now would you please join me for a minute of silent contemplation. During this time, if you have lost someone close to you in the past year, or if among your family of friends you have ever lost someone to war or who had experienced war, we invite you to stand or to raise your hand or place it over your heart in silent witness to this loss. Thank you.
Almost 60 years ago, in 1967, the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. delivered these prophetic words at Riverside Church. Though the language may seem dated and it addresses a different war than those raging today, sadly, this excerpt remains as relevant now as when he spoke it. There is, at the outset, a very obvious and almost facile connection between the war in Vietnam and the struggle I and others have been waging in America. A few years ago, there was a shining moment in that struggle. It seemed as if there was a real promise of hope for the poor, both black and white, through the poverty program. There were experiments, hopes, new beginnings. Then came the buildup in Vietnam, and I watched this program broken and eviscerated, as if it were some idle political plaything of a society gone mad on war. And I knew that America would never invest the necessary funds or energies in rehabilitation of its poor so long as adventures like Vietnam continued to draw men and skills and money like some demonic destructive suction tube. So I was increasingly compelled to see the war as an enemy of the poor and to attack it as such. Perhaps a more tragic recognition of reality took place when it became clear to me that the war was doing far more than devastating the hopes of the poor at home. It was sending their sons and their brothers and their husbands to fight and to die in extraordinarily high proportions relative to the rest of the population. We were taking the black young men who had been crippled by our society and sending them 8,000 miles away to guarantee liberties in Southeast Asia, which they could not have found in Southwest Georgia and East Harlem. And so we have been repeatedly faced with the cruel irony of watching Negro and white boys on TV screens as they kill and die together for a nation that has been unable to seat them together in the same schools. And so we watch them in brutal solidarity burning the huts of a poor village, but we realize that they would hardly live on the same block in Chicago. I could not be silent in the face of such cruel manipulation of the poor. As I have walked among the desperate, rejected, and angry young men, I have told them that Molotov cocktails and rifles would not solve their problems. I have tried to offer them my deepest compassion while maintaining my conviction that social change comes most meaningfully through nonviolent action. But they ask, and rightfully so, what about Vietnam? They ask if our own nation wasn't using massive doses of violence to solve its problems, to bring about the changes it wanted. Their questions hit home, and I knew that I could never again raise my voice against the violence of the oppressed in the ghettos without having first spoken clearly to the greatest purveyor of violence in the world today, my own government. For the sake of those boys, for the sake of this government, for the sake of the hundreds of thousands trembling under violence, I cannot be silent.
Again, thanks for that wonderful music this morning, Jill, that so enriches our time together. This is the second time I have preached a Memorial Day sermon from this pulpit. Once again, it feels strange to tackle as serious and tragic a subject as war on what is for most of us a welcome extended weekend to enjoy with our families and friends, a time when the weather is usually pleasant enough to enjoy outdoor activities. The school year is almost over, and many of us are looking forward to summer's often more leisurely pace. This year, our church holds a family retreat on this weekend, which many members of our congregation are presently at, where we get to enjoy nature in a beautiful setting, play music and games together, hang out with our children, even become, for a moment, like kids ourselves again. Do we really want to be reminded that the people we are supposed to remember on Memorial Day are the soldiers who died in our nation's wars? Even if they died for a commendable cause, like the Northern soldiers who fought to end slavery in the Civil War, the subjects of the original Memorial Day. Their deaths are still a reminder of our own mortality and of the risks we might have to take to live our values with courage and integrity. And when you consider that most wars the U.S. have fought have had nothing to do with liberating anyone from bondage or exploitation, these thoughts are even more sobering. A few people in this room are old enough to have been children during World War II, or war where many enlisted to fight fascism, an honorable cause, one which, of course, is unfortunately back on the agenda and may force us soon to make tough choices about what we are willing to do to defeat it. Still, fighting fascism was not the main reason the U.S. entered the war. In our current capitalist and imperialist system, which dominates the world's economy, the purpose of war is to gain more power and profit for a few. And those few do not risk their own or their children's lives in battle. No, they risk the lives of other people's children, especially those whose economic prospects they limit, often by racism as well as by poverty and precarity. They either conscript them by force, or as in the U.S. today, by offering false promises of adventure, education, and upward mobility, should they sign up to be soldiers. Yes, we should remember and mourn the deaths of these soldiers. And we absolutely should demand that all living veterans receive the care they are owed by a government who put them in harm's way. And we should support their healing from moral and physical injury. Yet we can't, in good conscience, honor what they were actually fighting for. Now more than ever, as we face absolute ecological limits, this system, which depends on expanding of markets, must destroy what has already been built and ruthlessly battle competitors to find room to expand again. It seduces us with racism, nationalism, and twisted versions of religious belief, dehumanizing the vast majority of the world's peoples, all to ensure that we remain pawns on a giant chessboard to be sacrificed as needed to put their competitors in check. Our politicians are willing to invest $1 trillion of our taxes annually into this game. Meanwhile, funding for health care, housing, education, and environmental protections, what we really need, is being slashed with no mercy, and the war budget remains sacrosanct, even for those who oppose the cuts. There is no net value given to us in return for this deadly investment, and if there were, it would only be off the destruction of other people and the earth itself. At best, war may be a self-defensive necessity to liberate the oppressed when all other means have failed. If victorious, however, liberators risk becoming the next generation of warmongers and dictators if they glorify the means used to win, rather than soberly mourning the losses it took. A lasting peace requires building societies grounded in equity, freedom, democracy, and the sustainable use of resources to benefit all. To build, we must eschew the means to destroy. War for greed, though, is unforgivable. It is absolutely antithetical to Unitarian Universalist values. It leads only to the destruction of all we hold dear, even ultimately to the annihilation of humanity and probably most other life on this planet. Nothing we gain can last if power remains in the hands of those so greedy that they would risk everything just to become more obscenely rich and powerful. Opposing such war is necessary for our survival. So, why isn't opposing war at the very top of our priorities? I would posit that the inevitability of war is so ingrained in our consciousness that we seldom try to imagine a world without it. The problem of war is so big, ending it feels so impossible. Why bother? For millennia, prophetic voices have preached the value of peace. All the world's major religions claim peace as a virtue. Christianity, for example, cites Jesus as the Prince of Peace. Yet, still war persists. We long for a day when children are not starved and blown into pieces as they are in Gaza right now. And wherever the conflict is, on either side or more sides, no parent should ever have to bury a child killed in war. Yet war still persists. Even though many of us find fictional violence to be entertaining, I admit to the guilty pleasure of enjoying many TV shows that depict violence. Very few people enjoy it in real life. Most of us would feel genuine remorse if we lost control in a moment of rage and physically hurt someone. Unless convinced by propaganda that they are not fighting fully human persons, even most soldiers in the thick of battle have no real desire to kill. They are often traumatized for life if they know they have taken the lives of others. Yet, still war persists. That's not hard to imagine why. First, biologically, we evolved as predators and omnivores. Killing to eat and to defend ourselves was how we survived. It's kind of hardwired. As I heard UU minister Reverend Jonathan Kwong once say, all life is based on murder. That is, nothing can live without destroying other life. Even vegetarians kill plants. Second, though the stated justifications from war may vary greatly, at its root, war is almost always a battle for resources. Probably initially for the survival of small tribes competing for truly scarce necessities, but increasingly throughout history to enrich powerful elites. There are basically two roles in any war. Offensive forces initiate violence to expand their territorial control over resources, and defensive forces resist in kind. Defensive combatants mostly fight to survive and to keep whatever they have, even if they have nothing to gain otherwise. Offensive combatants mostly fight because they have been coerced or riled up by various forms of propaganda. The resources won or kept, scarce or not, remain controlled by those in power. Thus, in early human history, war might have been a rational, albeit brutal, group survival strategy. But modern war offers little to the actual fighters. Only wars of liberation, grounded in self-defense even when tactically offensive, can potentially offer benefits to non-elites, though at the cost of great sacrifice and morally troubling collateral damage. Plus, as I noted earlier, gains can be lost easily, such as when internal competition over scarce resources erupts, or battle readiness must be maintained against outside threats. As you can probably tell, I am not a pacifist, and I have physically defended myself against lethal force. And even at my age, I hope I will have the courage and ability to unite with others to resist fascism physically if we fail to defeat it through other means. And yet, though we may be hardwired to consider violence when we perceive it to be necessary, we have also evolved to have free will and to view our choices through a moral lens. As persistent as war is, if we can imagine peace, that is, imagine a time when the lives of all people are held sacred, never violated by state-sanctioned violence, we can continue working toward peace. As Sam said in his reflection, if you can't imagine it, what chance do you have of actually doing it, especially when the problems are so big that any rational person would say it was impossible to solve? Long ago, I also took a class. In this one, each student was assigned to create a, quote, impossible promise to guide their life's work. A promise so big, it would be impossible without engaging millions of people. Even more daunting, we had to set an achievement date within our potential lifespans. Here was mine, quote, by the year 2040, I promise a world where all people have the material and spiritual resources to live fulfilled lives and the power to choose lives they love. Achieving world peace is a necessary foundation for that promise. Can peace be achieved by 2040? Before you say no, consider this. Given the existential crises we face today, if we are not actively engaged now, 15 years before 2040, it may be too late to ever achieve peace. So imagine, yes, imagine that peace is possible, so that we engage ourselves now and others to make it a reality. Thank you. Thank you. Please rise in body or spirit and join in singing our closing hymn, number 163, For the Earth Forever Turning, in the gray hymnal.
Now our worship is ending, and the chance to imagine how we will make the world a better place begins. I want to call your attention to a couple such opportunities. On June 15th, you can join the Environmental Justice Working Group after the service. Details are in your order of service. And this Thursday at 11:30 a.m., there will be a vigil in support of immigrants at the ICE office on Sansom. Info will be on flyers on a table in the gallery outside. You're welcome to join in any of the opportunities that you see in the order of service, and please also join us in the courtyard for coffee hour before we start the rest of our days. Thank you.
As our worship comes to an end, we extinguish our chalice, carrying the memory of its light with us into the world beyond our doors, sharing its empowering symbolism by our courageous and compassionate actions. Thank you, Sam. Please rise as you are able and join hands for our benediction, or if you would prefer, cross your arms across your chest. As we face historical crises that may determine if humanity survives, may we continue to be inspired by what we can imagine. Imagine a world grounded in equity, sustainable prosperity, democratic decision-making, spiritual freedom, and scientific discovery motivated by love and respect for each other and the natural earth, available to everyone without exception, a world where peace prevails, not as the mere absence of war, but as the realization of justice. May imagination grow in each of us, and together may we build what we can only imagine today. Go in peace. Amen.